Today, I want to tell you the story of Aisha bint Abi Bakr. She was one of the most intelligent women in early Islamic history. She was politically sharp, legally literate, and deeply principled. Yet she raised an army, marched into battle, and triggered one of the most painful conflicts in Islamic history. But why? That is the question I want to answer today. Let me set the scene first. The year is around 656 AD. The third Caliph Uthman ibn Affan has just been assassinated in Medina in his own home while reading the Quran. This was not a battlefield death. This was a political murder inside the capital of the Islamic State. Now, at this point, Islam was no longer a tribal movement, it was a structured government, a legal system, proper institutions. So, the normal thing to do was obvious: report the crime, demand a trial, let the state handle it. But Aisha did not do that. She gathered an army in Makkah and marched toward Basra in Iraq. But before we get into this, let's talk about who she was. Aisha bint Abi Bakr was the wife of the Prophet. She spent years at the center of Islamic scholarship. She narrated thousands of sayings of the Prophet. She was someone leaders came to for legal opinions. The two men who joined her were no different. Talha ibn Ubaidullah and Zubayr ibn Awam were among the most senior companions of the Prophet. These were not ordinary people. These were the founding generation of Islamic civilization. These were people who built the legal system. They understood it better than almost anyone alive. So, why would they bypass it? Their reasoning was actually quite specific. They did not see themselves as vigilantes. They saw themselves as people trying to restore the rule of law. Here is their argument. When Uthman was killed, the rebel factions did not scatter. They stayed in Medina. They were armed, they were influential, and in their view, they had effectively taken over the capital. To Aisha and her allies, this meant that the state had already collapsed. Think about it in this way: a legal system can only function if the government is independent. But what if the government itself is surrounded by the very criminals it needs to prosecute? Can it really deliver justice? They said no. In their view, gathering a force outside Medina was not about bypassing the state. It was about rebuilding it, creating enough counter pressure to force the government's hand. But there was another force driving their decision, a deeply human one: guilt. Before the assassination, both Talha and Zubair had been critical of Uthman's policies publicly, and that criticism had fueled the anger of the rebels who eventually killed him. But they did not want his death. They could not escape the feeling that their words had contributed to Uthman's death. That kind of guilt is suffocating. It creates tunnel vision. It makes you want to do something, anything, as fast as possible. Aisha felt it too. When the news of the assassination reached her in Mecca, she was devastated. So the drive to bring his killers to justice was not just political, it was deeply personal. It was about redemption. Now, here is where it gets genuinely tragic. Ali ibn Abi Talib, the new caliph, was not ignoring the murder. He also wanted justice, but he operated on a different sequence. His logic was: stabilize the state first, then pursue the killers. Aisha's logic was the exact opposite. You cannot stabilize the state until you pursue the killers. Both positions were internally consistent. Both came from people of genuine integrity, but they were completely incompatible. And because neither side trusted the other's intentions, a military confrontation became almost inevitable. The result was the Battle of the Camel, a civil war, Muslims killing Muslims. and it haunted the entire community for generations. So, what does this story tells us? It teaches us something very uncomfortable. It tells us that intelligence does not protect you from making bad decisions under pressure. When people believe that the institutions of justice are compromised, they stop waiting for those institutions. Even the smartest, most principled people will rationalize extra legal action if they are convinced that the cause is moral enough. We see this pattern everywhere, in every era, in every society. When trust in institutions collapses, people do not wait for the process, they act. The story of Aisha and the Battle of Camel is not just an Islamic history lesson. It is a case study in what happens when communication breaks down between two well intentioned sides. It is a warning about what guilt and fear can do to even the clearest minds. And it is a reminder that the rule of law is fragile. It only works when people believe in it. The moment that belief cracks, even those who built it will find reasons to go around it. That's the tragedy, and it's one worth thinking about.